Hello, everyone. My name is Nicole. I am the social media manager for the Malden Group, and I'm here to welcome you to our HIPAA Compliance and Marketing Acumen webinar. We want to thank everyone for being here. We know you're very busy, and we really appreciate your service in the healthcare field, especially being on the front lines, helping patients during COVID. Your dedication is greatly appreciated, and we're happy that you're spending some of your time here with us today. We are not going to take questions during the presentation just because of the short time constraint, but we will answer questions directly via email after the presentation. Our first speaker is John Mammon. John Mammon is currently the president and CEO of Empowered IT, a leading managed and cloud services provider in Atlanta, Georgia. Mr. Mammon has over 25 years of experience in all areas of information technology leadership, including engineering and sales. His specialties include service design, cybersecurity, and harnessing cloud services. Mr. Mammon resides in Woodstock, Georgia with his 2 daughters and wife of over 25 years and authored a book titled The Extra Scoop, Rediscover the Art of Great Customer Service. Today, he'll be telling us about cybersecurity and HIPAA.
Thank you so much, Nicole, and let me add my words of welcome to all of our guests here on the webinar today, and thank you for all that you do. We're going to be talking today about cybersecurity and specifically as it pertains to compliance and HIPAA. And our agenda that we'll cover in this segment will include Network Security 101 and protecting patient health information and data holistically, and we like to talk about holistic data protection or security. We talk about that in the context of multiple security measures, or what we refer to as layers, and we'll touch a little bit more on that in the presentation. We'll talk about things like passwords and email security and other areas as well. So as we get started here, I want to give you the opportunity to pose a question in the chat window. So if you'll find the chat window in your Zoom application, and just give us an idea of what is your greatest area of concern when it comes to cybersecurity. There's so many different things that are out there that we hear about every day, and of course in our jobs we have to worry about protecting information. So if you'll just let us know what your greatest area of concern is when it comes to cybersecurity, we'd love to hear your feedback. So we'll start out with a basic, very basic concept, and what is HIPAA? And we're so busy with our data security and information protection and so forth that sometimes we forget that the HIPAA mandates were a series of regulation, and they provide for the ability to transfer health insurance coverage for American workers when they change or lose their jobs. That was one of the primary reasons for the act. It was also intended to reduce healthcare fraud and abuse, and also mandate industry-wide standards for healthcare and electronic billing and other processes. And of course, to require the protection and confidential handling of health information. And so from a practice responsibility perspective, we want to make sure that you're developing and implementing the policies and procedures that are applicable to your practice for properly protecting anything you create, use, transmit, disclose, store, or receive in any format. So basically, if you have patient health information, it's up to you to protect it. And another piece of that responsibility is also training all of your associates, and we'll touch on that as well. So here's some things that I'd like you to know as it pertains to network security in general. We'll talk about a few things there first. And we all have, a place that we reside, our residence, whether that's a home or an apartment or, a condo. But we have our residence and we have our belongings in our residence. And we want to protect those, right? We don't just keep all the doors wide open. It's for people to come in and take whatever they want. We want to protect what's inside. And so there's ways that we do that, right? We may bolt the front door. We may have a guard dog. We may have motion sensors. We may have an alarm system, so on and so forth. And so these are different ways that we protect in what we have inside of our residence. So there is a framework that is associated with security. It was developed by NIST, or the National Institute of Standards and Technology. And there's 5 pillars associated with that framework, and that's how do we identify threats, protect against them, detect them, respond to them, and recover from them. And you can see just some of the things I threw out and how we protect our residents where they may fall under these 5 pillars. Now, it's not important for you to remember all of these different pillars and so forth, but just understand that there is a security framework that underlies the HIPAA compliance for security and other compliances as well. Most compliances are based on this framework. Another basic thing I'd like you to know is some information about the internet itself. We all know, of course, ESPN.com or Amazon.com, other places we may shop online and search on Google and so forth. But these sites actually only make up about 5% of the internet. The remaining parts of the internet are what's referred to as the deep web, where you will find financial records, medical records, academic databases, and so forth, and then the dark web. And the dark web, just as the name might imply, is where all of the bad people live, right? It requires special tools to actually access this section of the web. It is where credentials that have been stolen are sold. It's where, and they're not so interested in it anymore, but where credit card numbers used to be sold, so on and so forth. You can actually purchase kits for becoming a hacker. You can get support for being a hacker. And there's a lot of other things that can go on the dark web too, but this is where, from a cybersecurity perspective, where those bad guys live. So think of a dark alley in a bad neighborhood that you'd never walk down alone, and that's what the dark web is. Again, not important to know all the details other than to realize and acknowledge that it does exist out there. This is a graphic from the Internet Crime Complaint Center, also known as IC3. The top line gives us the last 5 years of complaints registered. And if you'll look from 2015 to 2019, those complaints have not quite doubled over that time frame. But if you look on the lower part of the graphic where it talks about the monies that have been exfiltrated from organizations from 2015 to 2019, you can see that those monies more than tripled. So what that tells us is that the hackers, the bad guys, have gotten very, very good at their jobs, right? They're very good at exfiltrating those funds from organizations, and they're only getting better. And I'd also point out, too, these are only lodged complaints, right? There may have been many more breaches that were never filed with the Internet Crime Complaint Center. So the numbers are really staggering when you look at them. Some more key statistics for you to know: 43 to 58%, depending on who you talk to, of all attacks in 2019 struck small businesses. Key point: you're not too small to be attacked. In fact, the hackers really love going after small businesses because they spend the least amount of monies on protecting their environment, so they become easier targets. 78% of all employees do not follow the security policy set forth by their employer. Again, this is important to know because you are required to train your employees and set policies and police those policies. So that's a big number, 78%. That's over 3/4. Norton published not too long ago that one breach happens every 3 seconds. To put that in perspective, in the time we will spend here together on our call today, there'll be 1,200 breaches, roughly speaking. So again, the number is staggering. And then I noticed the AMA had put something out saying that 4 out of 5 physicians have been a victim of cyber attack. That is 80%. That's a very big number. And phishing or virus and malware, those are the top 2 issues that create these challenges. And we'll talk about both of those as well. But the key point here is that this is a real issue for medical practices. So what can you do? And the first thing we want to do in our protection is to never assume. We don't want to assume that we're too small of a target. You don't want to assume you're safe. All information is valuable to these hackers. They will find a way to use that in any information that they can get to exfiltrate funds. So don't think that your information is not valuable. Certainly in the case of patient health information, that information is very valuable. And as mentioned earlier, security should be delivered in layers. I refer to that as holistic security. And if you've ever lived in a really cold place, you know that you have to put on multiple layers to stay warm. I'm from Buffalo, New York originally, so I remember putting on multiple layers to stay warm. I couldn't move my arms very much when I had all those layers on, but I was warm. We approach security the same way in putting those layers in place, and we're going to talk about some of those layers together. First layer we'll talk about is bolting the front door. You probably know this device as a firewall. They are more sophisticated these days, and we refer to them as security appliances, but it does have firewall functionality, and you should have one in place. If you are relying on the router that is provided by your ISP, you do not have a firewall in place, and you should have one. You want to make sure that your firewall does intrusion prevention and detection, that it is scanning incoming packets for antivirus, for viruses or spam. There's an extra layer of protection there. And you want to make sure that it is doing content management. This is making sure that any known bad sites, people are not navigating them to them. It's also able to set different categories of sites to be blocked from navigation, and that can be important from an HR perspective as well. So it's good to have content management on your firewall. You also want to make sure that your firewall is actively monitored and automatically updated. You're going to see some common themes across some of these layers, and this is one of them. That device should be monitored. It should be updated on a routine basis. You want to make sure that the subscription is current. The minute that you do not have a current subscription on your appliance, or that subscription has not been updated, because some are a manual process, the appliance now proposes a security risk. There's a hole that is opened in your security protection. And you want to make sure all the features are enabled. I can't tell you how many times we've come into an environment where because there was a problem and the IT person could not fix the problem, they just disabled the features on the security appliance. This again creates a security risk for your environment. So you want to make sure those features stay enabled. The next layer is arming your devices, and there's basic and advanced things that you can do on for your endpoints. That's your laptops and tablets and PCs and so forth. So you want to make sure you have endpoint security in place. That's a broad term that covers antivirus, anti-spyware, adware, and Trojans and so forth. Again, here's some of those common themes. You want to make sure that the devices, the endpoints themselves are regularly scheduled for scans. You want to make sure that the endpoint security is centrally managed and it's locked down. This way users cannot tamper with the configuration. The minute something changes on those configurations, again, a risk is introduced. So make sure that those are the endpoint security is locked down and centrally managed. You want to make sure that your subscription is current. Once again, if it expires, you're missing updates that the bad guys can exploit. And then you want to make sure it is actively monitored and updated. Some advanced things that you can do, these things typically cost extra, but you can do them and should consider them. One is profile monitoring, where regularly scheduled scans can be placed on the machines to ensure that the machine remains in a very specific security profile. And just as a very, very basic example, we would have a profile that said, for instance, that patches were up to date and the antivirus was fully enabled. And we would monitor that device, and if one of those two things were not happening, then we would get an alert and we would take action. The Security Operations Center would take action to get the device back in compliance. So again, that was a very basic example, but profile monitoring does offer some really nice protections. And the other advanced thing that you can do is actually what's called advanced detection and response. It's actually a service that monitors for machine behavior. So the the hackers out there, the cyber criminals, are getting more and more sophisticated. They're able to launch attacks that are not traditional, that are, traditional would be file-based, for example, or link-based. They're actually able to go in and processes on the machines to launch attacks. So what this service does is to monitor the machines for very specific behavior or suspicious behavior, and then lock down that endpoint to ensure that nothing else is affected on the network, so we can go back and remediate the breach before anything too terrible happens. Both of these, again, are typically advanced services that cost additional dollars, but they are worth looking into to protect your devices. The next layer we talk about is caring about your passwords, and there's several things that you can do around this. The first is to use one password per need. Do not use the same password across multiple sites and multiple applications. It just makes it easier for that password to be stolen, and then more areas where it can be exploited. You want to make sure that the password is at least 10 characters long. The standard used to be 8, but that wasn't enough to stop the bad guys, or at least dissuade them, so it's now 10, and in some cases it's even getting to 15. So make sure that you're using a sophisticated password. You want it to be a mix of letters, numbers, case, and special characters. And you want to force changes regularly. Now, I know I just heard a lot of groans out there because nobody likes to change their passwords on a regular basis. Surely because there's so many passwords that we have to keep track of. We'll talk about that in a second. But you do want to force changes regularly. Using the same password for a long period of time just creates a security risk for you. Don't forget about your wireless environment. That should be secured in the same fashion. And definitely do have a guest network so you're not handing out the password to your production environment to guests. You want to use 2FA or two-factor authentication, also known as multi-factor authentication, for sensitive applications. In the email world, this is becoming standard, where you have to have 2 ways to log in, and this definitely helps protect the application and your data, whichever it may be. So use that where you can. And then finally, use a password safe if you don't have one. Now, password safes are not created equal, particularly free ones are not created as equal as ones that you would pay for, but a password safe across your environment allows you to enforce the kinds of things we're talking about here, and it makes it much easier for the users to have compliant passwords because they only have to remember the one to their password safe. So that's definitely something to investigate if you don't have that in place today. Our next layer is patch management. Out-of-date software is a leading cause of breaches, so we want to make sure that all of our programs and operating systems are patched. Again, one of those things that we have been saying over and over, make sure that it's centrally managed. You don't want to rely on end users to patch your devices. You want to make sure that somebody is doing that's responsible for security. So you'd want a provider to do this for you. And a helpful tip here is to leave your machines on. A lot of times what happens is people turn their machines off, and patches are usually applied after hours so that there's no performance impact to the end users. If they do not leave their machines on, then the patches will be applied when they are powered on, and then you have a performance impact, and many users will try to turn their machine off and stop those patches from being applied, and then that creates an even bigger mess. So just a helpful tip to leave your machines on so they can get patched appropriately by your provider. Make sure you're not leaving them logged in. They should be logged off and locked, but they should be powered on for this benefit. Our next layer is permissions. So you want to live by the principle of least privilege, or POLP. And what that means is identify what users have access to what areas and what systems, and then limit their permissions in those areas to specifically what they need. You also want to limit administrative accounts and we've walked into many environments where everybody has administrative privileges, and this is a big no-no in the security world. So make sure you're limiting the administrative accounts in the environment. Another tip, have a good offboarding process. When people leave your organization, you want to make sure that their accounts are being disabled and permissions are being revoked so they no longer have access to key systems and data. So make sure you have a good offboarding process. The next layer we'll touch on is monitoring. We talked about the dark web, so you know it's out there, you know it's real. There are services where you can have the dark web monitored for you, where we monitor for any credential compromise. So we can see when stolen credentials go up for sale, and what that does is it will kick up an alert to us, and we can actually go in and take remedial action by changing all the associated passwords for that environment in advance of those stolen credentials being compromised or used. I want to talk a lot about business email compromise with you because it is one of those key issues. When we saw the 4 out of 5 doctors have experienced a breach of some sort, this is one of the top ones, right? So the FBI refers to this particular category attack as business email compromise, or BEC. One type of that is phishing. You probably heard that word a lot. This is where the sender appears as a trusted source and contains the email contains malicious link information or a fake login page. Think an Office 365 login link that isn't really Office 365. And then you go on to that particular fake page and enter your credentials, and boom, now the hackers have your email login. So that's what phishing is. There's also spoofed accounts, where an email appears to be from an actual sender that you know, but it's not from the correct system. This is a little harder to detect, and advanced email security is very helpful in trapping this, but know that it is a type of compromise. Counterfeit accounts is another type of email compromise where there's a slight variation to a username or domain. They may use a 1 instead of an I, for example, and you would not even catch that it's not coming from a valid user account. And they do all of this to impersonate vendors, coworkers, lawyers, legal representation, and what they're after is identifiable information, health information, W-2 information, and so forth. And there's something called social engineering. That's when cyber criminals will use things they find on social media for logos, background data, where people are traveling, and so forth, so they can carefully construct these fake emails and trick you into giving them information. So some suggestions to avoid business email compromise. First, get an advanced email security engine in place. You may have heard of this in the past as an anti-spam filter, but the advanced email engines do much more than that. They are also scanning the emails for potential malware and holding that back as well. And then the really good engines will do something we call sandboxing, where they're replacing URLs in the email with the sandbox URL. And when you click on that link, it goes to their engine, to that sandbox, to make sure that it's a safe URL before forwarding you to it. And the good ones will also even do that for documents that are attached, where they'll test that document to make sure that it is okay to open before you actually open it. So that's a really great thing to have in place. You want to exercise caution with posting to social media accounts for the reason we talked about. The cyber criminals are scanning those sites for any information they can use to infiltrate your organization. So be very careful when posting. Be suspicious of requests to be secret or any pressure to move quickly. So something like, hey, I'm on vacation, I need $5,000 wired to me right away, can you do that for me? Where they're creating that quick action, you should be suspicious of that right away, and make sure that you take whatever precautions are necessary when you get a message like that. One of the tips I like to give is to make sure you have an out-of-band communication process for something like that, or a procedure. So in that example, if the CEO is on vacation and asking for money to be wired to them, an example of an out-of-band communication might be to get physical sign-off from the chief financial officer. And then, or another example would be to actually call the CEO on their cell phone and validate they actually made that request. So very good to have out-of-band communication procedures in place. Another recommendation I have is to make sure you have third-party backup for Office 365 and G Suite. Everybody believes that because it's in the cloud with Microsoft or Google, that it is backed up in perpetuity. That is not true. They will keep system state or email state copies for 30 days, but it does not protect you against infiltration where a cyber criminal may delete your emails or corrupt those emails. So you want a third-party backup in place for those services. And then finally, we talked about the IC3. You want to report any incidents to the IC3, and there's a URL on your screen that you can jot down, and of course you'll see a copy of this if you're attending. The more that we know, the more these agencies know out there, the more that we can do to protect you. So report those incidents. Our next layer is email encryption. So everybody believes that sending emails is just you hit the send button and it arrives on the person's computer, and that is not true. Sending unsecured emails is like sending info on a postcard, right? And if you think about putting the postcard in the mail, a lot of hands touch that postcard. It can be read by anybody. It can be altered by anybody. They can write something on it if they want. And that is how email actually works. It leaves you as the sender. It stops at a lot of servers along the way, and those servers scan and create a copy along the path of travel. And anywhere along that stop, that email can be compromised. So if you are sending information that is sensitive, you want to make sure you're using an encryption tool to do that. You can, there was a question before our session here today around sending PHI via email encryption, and can you do that? Yes, you can. You should only be sending it that way. You want to make sure that your system that you're using for email encryption has a lot of good security controls in place if you're going to do that. But that said, the very best way to share information, to share PHI, is through a patient portal that does not require the transmission of information over email. Next layer is to be aware. So hackers hack people. We need to educate them. Certain standards definitely require this. HIPAA is one of them. So there are services out there called SAT or Security Awareness Training. I definitely recommend subscribing to those if you don't have them in place. What these services will do for you is actually train the users on a regular basis. For example, they may send a sample phishing email and point out what to look for to find, to figure out if it's a phishing email. And then later on, send an actual phishing email that's just a test to see if they actually can catch it. And then we get a report on that if somebody does click on a bad link, and that way we know we can go and retrain that particular user because they clicked on the bad link. So that's just one example of what awareness training will do for you. And you do want to educate on your security processes and policies. You remember that statistic that 78% of people don't follow them. So you want to constantly be educating on your processes and policies, particularly as it pertains to security. So I have some special offers for the attendees here today, just for our show attendees. One is DarkWeb Monitoring and Security Awareness Training Bundle. That's normally $179 a month and $3 per user per month for that service. For the show attendees, we're doing this for $129 a month, all in. Doesn't matter how many employees you have on the service. We also have the password safe services, which we talked about. Those are normally $4.50 per user per month. And for show attendees, they're $3 per user per month. So we've got some nice discounts for you around these services that a lot of people aren't offering. So wanted to make those available to you. My contact information is here on the screen. You'll be getting that as well via the chat window and in a copy of this presentation. I encourage you to reach out if you have any questions or concerns that we didn't address here today, or if you just need an ear to share some information with and maybe get some advice. I'm here to help you. Please feel free to reach out. And I'll turn it back over to you, Nicole.
Thank you so much. That was very informative. So much information. Our next speaker is Bonnie Malden. Bonnie Malden has been featured in the Huffington Post, Fox News, CNN, the AGC, and the movie The Inner Way. She left her career in medicine to open her own marketing agency that now serves multi-million-dollar companies nationwide. She was recently awarded Business Person of Excellence and has won Business of the Year by the Chamber of Commerce. Her company, the Malden Group, is ranked as a top 10 SEO and PPC agency in Atlanta by expertise.com. Her team specializes in serving small businesses with professional web design, internet marketing, and business development training. Bonnie also serves as the president of the Sales and Marketing Academy and serves on the board with the Greater North Fulton Chamber of Commerce. She is a seasoned speaker, teacher, and author that is dedicated to helping entrepreneurs become more profitable and expand their brand to new heights.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being on our webinar today. We're just absolutely happy to have you get this action-packed, information-packed webinar. I want to share with you some ways to be HIPAA compliant with your website, some ways to be ADA compliant with your website, some ways to help you with the marketing and branding of your healthcare agency, and to have some extra streams of income coming in. Also, I have a very special offer for you with a marketing strategy session. So we're going to jump right in with the HIPAA compliant website. So your website is a doorway to the globe. Hackers, spammers, and viruses are constantly a threat to your website, and more importantly, your data. HIPAA compliance not only has strict guidelines concerning the protection of this data in your office and daily operations, but also your online transactions. Failing to have a HIPAA compliant website can mean penalties that range from $119 to over $50,000 per violation. Identical violations can amount to almost $2 million. That's a lot of money. So who needs a HIPAA compliant website? These people include healthcare providers like doctors, dentists, chiropractors, clinics, pharmacies, psychologists, counselors, and nursing homes. Healthcare plans like health insurance companies, government programs, company health plans, and HMOs. And also healthcare clearinghouses. These include companies or community health systems that provide billing services. So what is PHI and ePHI? PHI stands for Protected Health Information, and ePHI stands for Electronic Protected Health Information. This is the individual, personal, and medical information collected for your patients, clients, and customers. So some examples of PHI would be your patient's name, address, date of birth, phone number, email address, medical record information, and financial information. And your website is responsible for handling electronic patient health information as it pertains to contact forms, patient portals, live chat messaging, online fillable patient forms, and pages for patient testimonials and reviews. So when it comes to HIPAA compliant websites, you want to have a few good practices. This includes secure encryption of all data. You want to have email notifications of the website form receipts. You want to make sure that no PHI information is transported along with the notification. So it says, thank you for your information. You don't want to list that information along with what they submitted in the autoresponder. And then also, it's important to include regular archiving of web form data to secure internal storage, and not to store the data on the web forms server after the downloads. And again, like John said, you want to have frequent downloads, frequent password changes, complicated passwords, and make sure that they're changed every 30 days, I would say. Okay, so let's talk about ADA compliance. Is your website ADA compliant? Let's talk about what that is. The Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, requires certain businesses to make accommodations for people with disabilities. Web content should be accessible to blind users, deaf users, and those who must navigate by voice, screen readers, or other assistive technologies. Failure to create an ADA compliant website could open a business to lawsuits, financial liabilities, and damage to your brand reputation. So lawsuits are on the rise for ADA compliance breaches. So these numbers are expected to do nothing but increase as the need to enable accessible digital experiences become more prominent. So the key here is to mitigate the risk of legal action. So here's some things that you can do to make your website ADA compliant. You want live or audio content to include captions. Contrast ratio between text and page backgrounds is at least 4.5 to 1. Text on pages can be resized to 200% while still remaining form. Images are not used where text can achieve the same purpose. Pages on the site can be assessed in multiple ways. Keyboard focus is visible and clear. The language of content is identified in code with any language changes. Menus and buttons are used consistently regardless of the user's location in the site. Users are given suggestions on how to solve input errors. An error prevention technique is used whenever the user is entering sensitive data. Underlined text that does not provide a link is removed. Redundant links on the same page are eliminated or minimized. So just as a visual representation of what I'm talking about here, I have provided you with an example from one of our clients, Morningstar Personal Care. This is a website that serves the community with health and wellness consulting and support. And some of the things you would want your website to be able to do to be ADA compliant is to be able to increase that text size. Look, I can go as far as 200% with this. And it doesn't change the integrity of the information. I can decrease the size. I can make the website in grayscale for those that are colorblind. I can do high contrast. I can do negative contrast. I can do a light background. I can underline all the links that's clickable. You see that? And I can make it in a more readable font. So these are just some of the examples of what you'd like to have in your website to make it ADA compliant. And now I'd like to introduce you to Molly Welch. She is a motivational speaker and advocate. She is the founder of A Second Later. And her message to us today is everyone should be able to join.
Hello. It's extremely important that people with disabilities feel engaged in everyday activities. When you think about it, who likes to feel left out and incapable of doing certain things? No one. It's a human need to feel included, and this webinar should help individuals do just that.
Thank you, Molly. So Molly sustained a traumatic brain injury with a head-on collision with a pickup truck on I-85 when she was a junior in college. Now she's a strong advocate against distracted driving. She's helped with some legislation to stop texting and driving. And she is an advocate, and she's done a TED Talk, and she speaks professionally to drive home the message, do not drive distracted. So thank you, Molly, for everything that you do, for your time with us today.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's talk about healthcare marketing. How to improve your healthcare marketing. I have provided all of you with my ebook, Top 10 Steps to Master Healthcare Marketing. It just gives you a strong snapshot of some of the things you need to look at to improve your marketing. First thing is branding. Successful brand marketing consistently promotes your logo, your company colors, your company origin story, and your company's mission and values. Good places to begin your brand is your social media pages, your website, and of course, other outside tangible things like your business cards, vehicle wraps, maybe name tags, uniforms, brochures. The next thing is your website. You want the website to be SEO optimized. You want people to be able to find the website in a Google search. You want the website to have pictures of yourself and your staff, bios, and your credentials to show that you're trustworthy and credible Some of the best healthcare websites offer patients online scheduling, patient portals with access to their health data, online bill pay, and easy messaging capabilities. So you want to also make sure your website is fast, it's secure, and it's mobile responsive. Next thing is video. Video marketing gives the healthcare industry a chance to connect with patients and educate them on how to live a healthier life. Using video marketing can help patients feel important and connected. So some of the videos that you should have in your marketing mix include patient testimonials, physician profiles, procedures, and condition education. Next, you have social media. This offers healthcare organizations several compelling advantages. It's excellent for raising brand awareness and developing the kind of trust with patients that's necessary for forming meaningful relationships and long-term loyalty. So pick a platform like Facebook or YouTube and post to those very consistently. We're talking at least once a week. And next we have paid media. You are allowed to advertise on platforms like YouTube and LinkedIn and Google, and you're able to target a very specific audience and easily track your conversions and data. So people will click on your ad, you only pay if they click, and then when they click, they go to your website, and you're able to track if they called you to make an appointment or if they filled out a form on your site. It's amazing. So think about paid media. And then next we have public relations. You have a tremendous opportunity to engage the media by setting up a press kit with a press release, bios of the physicians in the office, topics that you're willing to speak on. And so when a reporter needs a commentator for a news story, they'll pull out your press kit, they'll reference you, you'll be on the news or on a television program or radio program, and then you'll have patients all over locally saying, I heard you on the radio, I saw you on TV, and wanting to make an appointment with you. And then you have email marketing. Email marketing is one of the best ways you can keep your patients engaged and stay at the top of their minds. By providing valuable information about their health and your facility, you can work to create and foster positive and long-lasting patient relationships. So some of the things that you would want to send are appointment reminders, important documents, annual checkup reminders, facility news and updates, seasonal health tips, upcoming community and office events, and promotions. So make sure you're emailing your patients more securely. And then you have business directories. It's so important for you to have a profile on the top business directories. But first you have the search engine directories. Those are Google and Yelp and Yahoo and Bing. Those are some of the ones that you want to have your business name, address, phone number, maybe a few pictures, a description, and then also saying what types of insurance you accept in your office hours. And then you have very industry specific business directories like Health Grades, Rate MDs, ZocDoc, Doctor Directory, and bestdoctors.com. So these are some of the directories you need to be on, the search engine ones and also the industry specific ones, making sure you have a fully filled out profile so people can look you up and feel confident in making an appointment with you. And then next is online reviews. Patients do look at your online reviews before they decide to make an appointment, so make sure you're mitigating any negative reviews by reaching out to your patients after their appointment to say, how was our service? Is there anything we can do to help? Do you have any feedback for us? And then also proactively asking for an online review by sending them a link to your online directories and asking for that positive feedback. All right, so let's talk about building multiple streams of income. I want you to have several ways to make money. So the first one is ebooks. When it comes to ebooks, you want to shoot for about 40,000 words. You can put that in a Word doc, send it to us, and we'll get it formatted. We'll create a beautiful book cover, and you can put that thing on Amazon and have hundreds of dollars coming in just from a book that you wrote. Just find a topic that you feel people would be interested in. Do a little research to see how other books on that topic are performing, and start writing. Use your knowledge to share it with the world through books. Next, think about e-learning. If you are a good teacher and people have told you that you're good at explaining things, it may be a good idea for you to put together a video series teaching on a certain topic that you enjoy teaching on. You can put those videos on a website. You can include multiple choice questions or worksheets or progress bars. And students can log in, pay for your training, and you can have another income stream teaching courses online. Next, membership websites. If there is a community of people out there and they're wanting to commune with each other and support each other, such as multiple sclerosis or cancer, or maybe medical students, maybe you can put together a membership website where everyone can pay a certain amount per month, $75 a month, $150 a month, and then you can disseminate information through the site where people can commune and get together and have community. Speaking engagements are great for the healthcare community. You can put together a speaker sheet with your bio, your headshot, your speaking topics, your rates, and your contact information, and send that out to different business organizations, and you can be hired to be a speaker as well. Next, think about becoming a product distributor. You can put your name or your company's name on a product and sell it in your office. Things like pillows or ergonomic furniture or anything that you can think of that would enhance your patients' lives. Put your name on top of it, sell that product yourself, have an extra stream of income there. YouTube, if you're loving to do video, you can produce a series of videos and offer advertising through YouTube on your videos and have a stream of income there. And then coaching and consulting. There are people who want to get support from you, be motivated by you. You can be a coach in that respect. And there are people who need some advice and guidance on their projects that they're working on, and they can get some consulting from you. And so if you set up a website with your bio, with your headshot, with your coaching or consulting credentials and your areas of expertise, people would be willing to hire you to help them. So those are just a few ways that you can add some extra income to your bottom line. So here at the Malden Group, we're a professional web design and internet marketing agency specializing in e-learning. And we have an office here in Roswell serving the North Fulton community. And I'm offering a complimentary marketing strategy session. And that would be a 1-hour Zoom call to discuss ways to improve your brand and enhance your online presence. Also, I'm offering a free ADA compliance website report, okay? So we can do a scan on your website and tell you all the different areas where you can make changes to make the website ADA compliant. So those with disabilities can have their technology, scan the site, and be able to read what's on there. And that's absolutely free as well. So reach out to me and I'll be happy to get that for you. Nicole's gonna put a link on the chat where you can book a time to get your ADA report and book your free marketing strategy session. For the ADA service that we offer, we have programs as low as $49 per month to make your website ADA compliant. So definitely take advantage of the free report, and then we may have some solutions for you. All right, so that report, priceless, that Zoom call priceless, is a $500 value I'm giving to you for free. So because we want to stick to our timetable, we're going to let you email us your questions. John and I are absolutely dedicated to helping the healthcare community during this difficult time. We are just so grateful that you've dedicated your lives to helping people stay well and get well. And just hats off to you. You're just amazing for being in this field. Our emails are presented here. Nicole will put our emails in the chat. And John, did you have any closing remarks?
Only to say just thank you to everyone who's joined us today. And we do thank you for everything that you do out there for us and being on the front lines during this time and every time, all times. Absolutely.
As a dedicated healthcare worker, you have gone above and beyond to serve the suffering individuals and give them a new life. We all owe you big time. Thank you so much for joining our webinar. We'll be in touch.
Thank you everyone for joining us today. I want to reiterate what Bonnie and John said. Thank you for everything that you do, especially during this crazy time. We will be sending out a survey to allow you to rate this webinar and give us your feedback. And again, there are lots of really helpful links in the chat. You can look at that for our downloadable PDF to master your healthcare marketing, Molly Welsh's LinkedIn page, as well as contact information for both John and Bonnie. And they'll be happy to take your questions. And thank you very much for joining us today.
Have a great day.